Ladies and gentlemen, pay attention. This is your boy, the coach from the WWE. I would like to welcome you to the very first wrestling podcast in the world to take you on a weekly deep dive into classic matches along with legends of the squared circle. Enjoy the discussion. Enjoy the back and forth. There's so much to get into. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the payoff.
Can you see me?
You stole my joke.
Damn it. I'm Tom. That's Jeff. This is the payoff. I guess we both had the same cheesy joke in mind.
That's just, I know you can't unsee him. You know, that's just ridiculous. But yeah, of course, talking John Cena Umaga today. You know, this is exciting.
I believe, and you may have some better statistics on this than me. We're talking probably one of the top 10 John Cena matches of his career.
Yeah, easy. I would think so.
That's what I thought too. This would be a fun one to cover, you know, as we're wrapping up and this is our last Royal Rumble match of the year, right?
Is it? Yeah, I believe so. I'm taking a look here through this. And so obviously Rumble was last week. And so, yes, after this, we start getting into, we'll be surprised. You know, we got a little bit of downtime before Mania, but we got some exciting things happening though.
Okay. Yeah. We've got, our next two matches are really good ones.
Yep. Yeah.
They're all good, man. We're hitting our stride here with some just awesome matches and got a lot more good ones covered. So, this is our last Royal Rumble match of this year. We kind of extended it here into February, but I'm pumped to cover this one. I remember watching it at the time and just thinking, holy shit, that was a really good match. It was way better than I expected. So certainly haven't seen it in 14 years. So I'm excited to go back. But we're on the road to WrestleMania 23 and it should be a good one. Why did you want to cover it, or what are you looking forward to?
This is one Umaga is the bigger attraction for me here. Like I was, and we'll talk about it after this. I was at the WrestleMania where he was Vince's, representative of the Battle of the Billionaires.
Yeah, just a few months after this.
Yep. And so we'll talk about that later in the show. But yeah, this is one where just kind of I remembered some of him, but not all of him. And so I remembered him being that kind of the monster and things like that. And so, kind of dealing with that, of course, kind of another wrestler kind of, I say taken, it died 2009. And so, kind of dealing, who knows type thing, unfortunate. And so, it's just, but his career overall, just kind of who he was, again, that just that Samoan heritage, and who he was, like, that's just, and so like real world, he was actually he was the uncle to the Usos, and things like that. And so, yeah, I'm excited to talk about him. I'm excited to talk about this match overall. This should be good stuff.
All right. Well, then let's get right into the build.
Oh, it's time for the build.
We're in San Antonio. We're not the big venue. We're not the Alamo Dome that has hosted two Royal Rumbles. We're just at the AT&T Center, which is your typical arena. And there's two things on this card that I distinctly remember, one being the match that we're covering and the other I'll get to here in a second. But we start out with the Hardy Boys. Gosh, what a run for the Hardy Boys, man, when you think about it. We were just last week talking about Royal Rumble 2000. Of course, they were in a tag match there, and that was just a few months before their classic WrestleMania 2000 three-way ladder match. But here we are 7 years later, and the Hardys are in a tag match against Joey Mercury and Johnny Nitro. They're going to win that. Lashley, who's your ECW world champion of all things, is going to defeat Test by count out in 7 minutes. Your heavyweight champion, Batista, is going to defeat Mr. Kennedy in 10 minutes. Kennedy, man, that guy just did nothing for me. I didn't get it. I didn't get Vince's, being so enamored by the guy. Just never understood that one. Then the reason we're here, which is this last man standing championship match between Cena and Umaga. And then the final match on this show is your Royal Rumble. But Jeff, what I remember about that, I believe this is the best Royal Rumble match of all time, is the final 10 minutes were the last two competitors, which are The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels. Now, remember, this is 2 years before we got their first of two classic matches at WrestleMania. Obviously, they had wrestled in Shawn Michaels' previous stint, right, his earlier career, but this was mixing the two of them who were on different brands in the finals of the Royal Rumble. This was a classic. I want to go back and watch it because it's been a while, but what a cool way to end the Royal Rumble, of almost like a 10 minutes like mini match classic between these two. And again, 2 years before we'd start getting their classics. But this was interesting. And, going on in the business at the time, there were quite a few things. Bam Bam Bigelow had just passed away. And what I forgot was he was in a really bad motorcycle accident that I guess started his health issues. But, man, he was only 45 years old. And I think Bam Bam's just one of those extremely underrated guys in the business. I mean, Bam Bam was kind of, around doing things in the 80s. And then, he was still there in the 90s, and he had the LT main event at WrestleMania, and he went off and did some awesome stuff in ECW. He had a run in WCW. So I just always thought Bam Bam was underrated. And I would have liked to have, his stuff in ECW is great. I would have loved to have seen him be a little bit more of a main eventer in the WWF at one point. But Bill DeMott was fired from Ohio Valley Wrestling. Remember, he was just hazing the shit out of them or whatever he was doing. So he got fired. As you mentioned, we're building to the Battle of the Billionaires. The McMahon-Trump feud is building. And, this was an underrated WrestleMania. I know it did a great buy rate. The HBK Cena match, not often talked about, and it wasn't supposed to be that. It was supposed to be Triple H Cena, but that was a really good match. And then I'll tell you, one of the more underrated matches in WrestleMania history is the Batista Taker match. So I believe I was watching a Batista documentary, and this was a few years ago, and he said, the best match of my career was against The Undertaker at WrestleMania 23. It was an incredible match. We just beat the shit out of each other for 12 minutes. I'm like, I'll go back and watch that. I went back and watched it. I'm like, that was an incredible match. So that might be one at some point we want to cover, but again, under the radar, but a really, really good match. Also on Raw, either the week before or the week after this pay-per-view, I'm not positive, I don't remember, but we got a 15-minute Edge HBK match. That could have been a feud, man. You think about like what HBK and Jericho did. Give me HBK and Edge for a 6-month program. My God, would that have been good, but we never got it. And the only other thing I saw was announced was, and this was January, but they had announced that in December, there would be an ECW December to Dismember pay-per-view coming on December 2nd. And we obviously have talked about that one. So that's all I have. Yeah. So storyline standpoint, how do we get to Cena and Umaga in a last man standing match?
Yeah, so we haven't talked about him before, so I want to kind of get into Umaga and the kind of history. And so he had actually started, trained under, with Matt Anaoy. They were, that Samoan heritage, things like that. And so his debut is actually World Extreme Wrestling, WXW. It was actually Afa's wrestling promotion. And so who was his uncle. So then it kind of, and that would have been, 95 through 2001. It was 2001 where he was signed to a developmental contract, WWF. He started out there with Heartland Wrestling Association, the HWA. And then he had a tag with his cousin Matt, and they were the Island Boys. And so at the time, and he's gone by a couple different names, he uses the name EKMO, EKMO was his kind of ring name. So they had some tag championships there, competing undefeated for, wrestling or Memphis Championship Wrestling, really just kind of going through that, the territories at that point when the territories were a bigger thing. He did, though, during this time kind of get a reputation, what I was reading, of kind of just he was injuring people, just kind of, dealing with that as well, too. And so, ended up going to TNA for a little bit. He went to All Japan Pro Wrestling for a little bit, and then eventually came back. It was December 2005. He re-signed with the World Wrestling Entertainment. So his debut, re-debut, whatever you want to call it. It was actually a episode, April 3rd, 2006. That's when he came by. It was this new character that he had previously had that was just kind of this, island savage. And the only person that can control him was his manager, Armando Estrada. And so, right out of the gate, he attacked Ric Flair, in his debut. And then actually that was his first big match, if you will, would have been Backlash of that 2006, taking on Ric Flair. And beating Ric Flair. So you had that, and then really this, from his debut on, started accumulating a winning streak. Like there was some, of course there was like the no DQ kind of, the weird stipulation losses, like a count out or stuff like that. But we don't ever count that for the sake of kind of counting. But really throughout this time, beating big names. And I say these are the big names, like John Cena, Shawn Michaels, Triple H, kind of really having all that. So that SummerSlam, he was supposed to be the enforcer for Vince McMahon and Shane McMahon during their match, the two of them taking on Degeneration X that show, Shawn Michaels and Triple H, but he was attacked by Kane as he was coming out to the ring. So him and Kane ended up having a feud as well, too. There was a loser leaves Raw match that October, which Umaga won, sending Kane off the brand. And so at that point, you kind of had them on different brands, but they still had one final match, which this storyline that makes sense. It was Cyber Sunday, actually, of that 2006, where the two of them having a match. Why they don't bring this back, I will never know, but it doesn't make any sense. But just a short singles match under 10 minutes, and Umaga beating Kane at that one. So you still have, though, up to this point, so that Cyber Sunday pay-per-view, that took place, it was November 2006. This whole time, he still hadn't been pinned. And again, like I said, he had the weird, there were some losses, but we don't, not pinning losses. But he was deemed the number one contender. And at the time, it was, or for the number one contender for the championship. And then John Cena, who had some matches before, was the title holder. So you get to the New Year's Revolution pay-per-view, Cena actually beating Umaga and ending his, I say, TV streak, retaining the title. And what the numbers I saw, and of course it's always, who knows, it's Goldberg, but or the Goldberg problem, 34 televised matches, he won all of them from his debut or re-debut until this January 2007 show. So you've got putting his name out there, doing a good job, having good matches, but, right in the heat of it with this feud with John Cena. So it makes a lot of sense. So the night after, you had his manager, Armando Estrada, asking for a rematch, which rematch clause, whatever, who knows? This was the time where that was nonstop. Cena agreeing to it. So, and then it was actually that Raw, again, the Raw after, Cena was having a match with the Great Khali. Umaga interfered and attacked Cena. So then you get the contract signing, of course, the following week, because that's just how these things play out. If you don't get a contract signing, which why every wrestler doesn't sign their contract in the ring. Who knows? But anyways,
I feel like you've been reading, obviously, the dirt sheets and doing a ton of research for the show.
Yeah.
Is there ever, to the best of your knowledge, and you may have to look this up, but when they've done the contract signing behind the scenes, just like in Stamford, has there ever been a fight that's broken out?
Behind the scenes? I don't think so.
Okay, so it's just interesting. Typically, these contract signings go smoothly unless they're in front of the camera.
Yeah, and you got to wonder, and you remember, you and I signed our day contracts.
We did.
So, there was no problem there. Like, I'm still upset. I've never told you this. I'm still upset to this day because we were there and, we were in the lobby and we're kind of waiting because they're calling everybody in one at a time. And I was like, and you and I went and, got to spend that weekend together. And you're like, no, go in ahead of me. It wasn't a big deal. And I was like, I felt like, man, you helped, get this set up. Like, you should go first. You're like, no, go. So I go, I'm geeking out. You got Matt Bloom in there and all this other stuff, and there's pictures of me just like geeking out over my shit. So then I do it, and you're the one that goes in after me, and like, who fucking walks in the room and who had been out for the better part of a year, but Finn fucking Balor's there. And nobody had seen him, and so it was like a huge thing. I remember he was in the weight room training that day, very light.
He walked in by accident while I'm, some dumbass Mark is sitting there signing his fake contract for the Performance Center fantasy camp, and he walks in the door by accident. He's like, "Oh, I'm not supposed to be here." And Bloom's like, "No, you're not." Like, and of course, then by this point, I'd already shaken his hand and asked for a picture.
Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly. And so, just crazy. Yeah. But we, and that was a big thing. But anyway, so that's always been a fun memory for me. But anyway, so yeah, the contract signing, and then they actually, that Estrada would choose the match type. He chose a last man standing match, and so that is the stipulation for this match. So that's something to keep in mind as we're kind of watching this one. And then, of course, he signed the contract, and as always happens, what happened? Cena attacks both of them. So you get that. And then it was the week before that, just on Raw, there was a battle royal, which Cena was eliminated. Then Umaga attacked him. And so I say this is one of the standard builds where you had, a match on the pay-per-view before, you got your rematch, you get a contract signing, you got to add a stipulation to it as well. You get the random, contract attack. Then you get one more kind of attack after, Umaga playing the heel on this one. And so I say no love lost between these guys, but just kind of made sense how they got there. And just, I say, and I feel like I overuse it sometimes, but a standard build on this one of just kind of what happened and how it played out.
Okay.
Thoughts?
Nothing wrong with an old fashioned build.
Right.
To a wrestling feud. So if you want to watch it with us, Royal Rumble 2007. We're at the 1 hour and 12-minute mark on the dot. Jeff, are you ready for the payoff?
I can see you, my friend. Let's do this.
All right. It is time for the payoff.
Oh, it's time for the payoff.
All right, they're like wailing away each other. We're hitting the ground running on this one. And again, last man standing match. So anything can and probably will go. Got to be the 10 count to not be able to stand back up. So, not to be confused with a ambulance match or a falls count anywhere match, but last man standing, a little bit different. And man, I'm looking forward to this one. I remember this being an awesome match. So Cena has a lot more bad matches than good matches, but he, in my mind, okay, that's just me.
Yep, I'm with you.
Every once in a while, man, I think about, this, I think about Shawn Michaels, I think about some Batista matches. You're just like, holy shit, this guy can work, man. Kevin Owens, AJ Styles, right? He's had some really, really good matches. So, again, the sample size being that he was on top for over 10 years. So there's a lot of good and a lot of bad, I guess, but not a lot of classics, all things considered. But this was a good one. If it's okay with you, Jeff, as we get started, I did a little digging on cagematch.net in terms of Umaga matches. So as far as the best matches he was ever involved with, the only thing that topped this was the 2008 Royal Rumble. So the year following this, they rated that Royal Rumble, Meltzer did, at 4.25 stars. But obviously he was a small part of a large match. Mm-hmm. So in terms of his best matches ever, the 3 4-star matches that he was involved with was this match, a match in 2008 with Jeff Hardy. That was a steel cage match. And then he was also in an elimination chamber match along with Jericho, Jeff Hardy, JBL, HBK, and Triple H, which I don't remember, but that's the 2008 elimination chamber. And that might've been the one where Taker was involved with Shawn, and that built to that, but don't quote me on that. And then in terms of cage matches own rating system, this is the highest rated Umaga match of all time. Just beating that elimination chamber match.
Okay. Interesting.
Other fun fact that I found is the final match of his career. So he was in WWE almost up until his death. His last main match with televised match in WWE was a Samoan strap match where CM Punk defeated him in 9 minutes at Extreme Rules 2009. So he worked a match in Puerto Rico for WWC under the Umaga name, defeating Ken Anderson. And then he wrestled a few matches. His last 4 matches were all on that Hulkamania Let the Battle Begin tour. And that's the one that was Hogan Flair just beating the shit out of each other and getting all bloody in the main event of each one of those. So he was in a tag team with Orlando Jordan, losing to Brian Christopher and Salafa Fatu Jr., who I'm assuming that's a Samoan. That was Rikishi. Okay. So Rikishi was in that one, Rikishi and Brian Christopher. The next night he defeated Brutus Beefcake. The third night of that tour, he was on the losing end with Orlando Jordan, losing to Brutus Beefcake and Ken Anderson. And then his final match ever, he lost to Ken Anderson. He was Uso Fatu, ring name for each of those matches. So that's it, man. That's what I have for you in terms of his career on cagematch.net. The only other thing I want to pull up, but go ahead. I'm sure you have a couple talking points. I'm just curious while I'm on here and thinking about it. I'd love to know what Cena's top rated matches of all time are. So I'm going to pull that up, but take us to another topic.
And if I had to guess, oddly enough, it would probably been one of his more recent. I think recent ones, the AJ Cena one at SummerSlam, and that could just be a timeline descriptor, like I forget what, or timeline bias of just how recent it was and things like that. But yeah, so
look at Cena selling the geez.
And so that was a Cena.
Cena was selling the steps like they weighed 1,000 pounds, which is funny because no one ever does that, but whatever. So he picks it up, he throws it onto Umaga, who is outside the ring, just like darts it at him. That was an awesome spot, man.
And that was, hey, who knows? He could have had a big lifting day the night before, or, the morning of. And so maybe it was just, we've all had that kind of final set where we struggle through. So it could have been anything. So, I get that. And so, yeah, and that was and they're showing it again right now, just chucking the ring steps at Umaga. He got the hands up to block it, but, the selling of it. But yeah, that was a lot right there.
Do you want me to pull up the Cena matches while we have a little break here in the action?
Were you doing it, or I could do it?
I got it. Now,
go for it, man. I figured I was trying to talk till you were ready. So let's do it.
Okay, so in terms of Cage Match, so cagematch.net, one of the cool things they do is they aggregate their own ratings, but then they also have the Meltzer ratings. So this match got 4 stars. Sorry, spoiler alert for later on the show. This match got 4 stars. There are 35 matches of Cena's career that are ranked higher than this, according to Meltzer. Now, all the way at the top of the list, his only 5-star match was the CM Punk match at Money in the Bank. Okay. Yep. Now he has 2 other, and we don't have to go through line by line, but I'll point out he has 2 matches that were 4 3/4, one of which was an incredible match. Maybe we're going to cover next year, which was the 3-way Royal Rumble 2015, where it was Lesnar, Cena, Rollins. That was like the greatest three-way match of all time. It was incredible. Okay. The other 4 3/4 star match he has was against AJ Styles. No surprise there. Okay.
Yeah, especially, yeah. And so that was you said it was the Rumble match and the triple threat. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, in terms of cagematch.net, their own rating system, this match is the 14th best match in Cena's career. Number one still being Punk Cena with a 9.66. Their second favorite match ever was him and Daniel Bryan.
Yeah.
Then they have a different Punk match, which was that was a different Punk match 2 years later. So yes, they've got some different ones too. But interestingly enough, so
yeah.
All right, we're in the ring. Both guys still standing. Match still going on. Nice start for the match though.
And now we're at the point too where Umaga has dragged in, I say, the bottom half of the steps. We were dealing with the top piece. And so now it's a little bit flatter, but we've got the bottom step in the ring at this point. Umaga kind of setting it up right now. He's propping it actually in the corner of the ring.
I guess I never realized how big the bottom half of the steps are.
I think we don't see them very often. And so, in this sense. And so I think that's probably why. And so he's got now Cena draped against it and kind of hitting him and beating him. And so something too, part of his character at this point was, because you'll see him occasionally like kind of looking to Estrada just for guidance, if you will. It's because that was part of the character, was they sold it as he was the only one that could control him. So he's kind of pointing at Cena as he's kind of laying out there. And so, and Cena getting out of the way, Umaga back first at this point as he tried to kind of almost give him stink face a little bit here. And Cena, pressing again with the steps, and just laying out with the side of the step. The fans loving it, though.
I was just going to say, the crowd is really into this match.
They're all on their feet, at this point, especially with what's going on with the steps and things like that. And so you see them just kind of excited and doing a lot here at this point, yeah.
Jeff, let me point something out. So right now the crowd's counting to 10 for Umaga for the last man standing. I'll tell you, talk about some fatigue on the crowd. They're counting from 1 to 10 for the last man standing match. Now, later on in the evening, they're going to have to count from 10 to 1 30 different times.
That is, it's a lot of math as we make the joke, at least my
counting
family.
Both up to 10 and down to 10 on this evening.
I'm not good at math.
Who says wrestling fans are stupid?
Right. I'm not good at math unless it deals with sports betting or Roman numerals in the Final Fantasy games. And so my math skills, I can tell you what a betting rate will get you, but you asked me to do, 20% on a tip, and I'm struggling over here. So
yeah, you can't do 20% on a tip, but then if I ask you what the second half over under is, you can magically calculate it so quickly.
Yeah, standing in front of the sportsbook numbers, like that's, I'm Albert Einstein over here. So good stuff. But so now you still got the steps in the middle of the ring. Umaga kind of pounding away at Cena. And again, and so good kind of in-ring psychology or just kind of, character development. Like, again, continuing to look at, Estrada as he's kind of, bossing him around and looking for guidance, which I think it's just a kind of a good way to kind of go with it, kind of the ring manager. It takes a lot to be a good one at this point. Obviously I think unfortunate to see her let go, but like Selena Vega was fantastic in the role. I think she's probably one of the better ones in recent memory, but and Umaga just kind of using the middle rope to kind of crush Cena underneath it at this point. But, Cena getting the knees up. And then the nether region's getting taken out.
I'm sure you build a tolerance for this, but I can't imagine wrestling in bare feet.
I've heard, who was it? I remember an interview from a long time ago that said it's like terrible because you're getting stepped on. Like, it's just not fun. And so I forget where either I read it or something like that. And I don't know why, but Dean Ambrose is sticking out as someone who was talking about his attire, and like he hated wrestling in the jeans because he just had no mobility. It was always tough to kind of get around. So he was actually happy to put the tights back on when he moved over to AEW. AEW. But another one I was thinking is because like Matt Riddle, flipping off the flip flops every time. And that was another one where, he talks about it. So can't see me. There it is. Yep. It didn't look like he hit him, but his Umaga's kind of draped over the steps. And so that's kind of become the center point tool of this match is those bottom steps. Cena's setting him up at this point. Oh, fighting to get him up. Ooh. There you go. Oh, and falling. That was a good setup, like falling onto the steps as he kind of collapses with the weight of Umaga on his shoulders. And so I'm curious too, like he ain't a little boy. And so I'm wondering what he was billed at this point. Because he's deadlifting a whole bunch of weight at that point.
So I looked up Umaga's cause of death as I was prepping for the show, and it just turned out, I mean, it was, because I couldn't remember, but it was, it's one of those, they're kind of vague. I mean, there's, painkillers and muscle relaxers and anxiety medication that was in his system. But then his heart kind of failed, and I guess he had a failed liver. I mean, so just not a healthy lifestyle, but
is this a blade job I see? Did we get it while Cena was hiding behind the steps? It looks like it.
We did.
Yep.
Cena's busted. You always forget, as we're doing these shows, Jeff, I always forget like when there's a blade job in every main event and when they stopped using blood. So, I'm like surprised when we see it, but I mean, he is about as bloody as you've ever seen John Cena, right?
Well, oh God, yeah, he's got the river of it kind of, and so you've got the official kind of or one of the officials trying to move those steps out of the way at this point. Yeah, but not working. They're still kind of just teetering on the edge here. Yeah, and that's why I think, especially nowadays, like it's so shocking when we see it, because it's just not something that you see a whole lot. I know that what was it? Because of the TV ratings being so bad, that USA Network kind of asking for a little bit more edgy of a product. And so I almost wonder, is that maybe one of the directions that you could go in here is, put the edgier kind of, a little bit more hardcore product, TV 14 on USA and allowing Fox to still have the, TV PG, if you will. And so, would that, do I necessarily want to see that? I don't know. But I think it's something where if they're talking about how bad the ratings are, and you and I, they only keep going down, especially with the holidays, don't help anything. This is one where, you kind of got to wonder like just what's happening and what's going on. So Cena, I guess, hulking up at this point, just taking the shots from Umaga, just bloody to hell. Oh, whoa. That was interesting. A modified backdrop. As the blood just kind of drips off Cena. But of course, like
beat the shit out of each other.
But, I figure like the not Jericho, he was involved, but the Randy Orton, Brock Lesnar, where Brock just split Orton open. It was just, just a river of blood flowing out of his head to the point where, we've heard the behind the scenes story of Jericho was like, what the fuck did you do? Ran over to Gorilla to be like, hey, unacceptable. So, kind of deal with that, but and so, but so far these guys just kicking the crap out of each other.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, crowd's into it. And I had forgotten. I mean, they're really into this match.
And I had forgotten. So he was going for his finisher. What was his finisher? Umaga was.
He did that thing where he like jammed his thumb in your esophagus.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
I guess that was, he had the thumb up in the air, the Samoan spike.
There you go.
That's what it was. High speed.
I don't hate it.
Yeah. The high speed thumb thrust to the throat. Yeah. It's funny too. It's some of these descriptions. So I just happened to be on like a wrestling Wikipedia page. And his secondary finisher was the Samoan wrecking ball, a running hip attack to the head of an opponent seated and leaning against the bottom turnbuckle. So that's what they called it. There you go. And he was billed at 351. And so
he looks every bit of it, huh?
6'5", 351. Yep. And so, he does look every bit of that. Absolutely. So, And here goes Estrada getting attacked by Cena with one of the camera or, the monitors from the announce table. We've got 2 weeks now. Are we going for a record here? 2 weeks of Crimson Mask. And so Cena, yeah, I know we have unintentional. So we'll watch it for you so that you don't necessarily have to if you don't want to. But that's one. But yeah, I wonder, it raises the bigger question. What can they do to fix the ratings? Do you know? What's your thoughts?
Wow. That's the $1 billion question, right?
Right. Yeah.
I gotta tell you, my initial reaction is based on the TV landscape. I just don't see it. I just don't see the ratings turning around. I mean,
oh no.
I'm not even saying going back to where they were, but I'm just saying here's the problem. Okay. There's obviously the inventory of it's so high. So we're not talking, hey, pro wrestling's on for an hour a week. It's on for 3 hours plus 2 hours plus 2 hours plus 2 hours plus more plus Impact, right? So it's supply and demand. There's just too much of it, okay? And it's just too hard to watch all of it. So that's part of the problem. But, being the Twitter, YouTube era, I mean, why do I care if I miss Raw? Because you're going to send me a clip, or I'm going to be thumbing through Twitter and seeing a clip, or if something massive happens, like someone that isn't even that big of a wrestling fan is going to send it to me, right? So it's just so, I don't know, if something happens, you'll see it. So there's no incentive. I want to continue this conversation in a second, but I got to point out that Umaga is 3 tables down. They've taken the tops off of all tables. He's about to, I guess, sprint across the tables, big splash, and he misses. That was a really cool spot, cool visual.
Great spot, yeah. Of him totally flayed out, about to dive onto Cena. That was a great spot. Yeah.
So he's going to try to get the 10 count here. But no, I don't know how you make pro wrestling must see TV. I mean, even the sports leagues are facing it because it's maybe I'll throw it on. Maybe I won't. I don't know. But do I have to watch the NFL? I don't have to, so that's kind of where I am on is I just think because there's so much inventory and there's so much on a weekly basis, I don't see where it becomes must see TV. And the only, and I'll just leave it with this, and I'm curious what you think. The only other thing I'll say is if it's going to turn around, it's going to take a mega star that transcends wrestling. Okay. So not another version of Roman Reigns, not a AJ Styles, right? Not even a Kenny Omega. I mean, you start going through the list. I mean, I'm talking like the next Steve Austin. Is there a Steve Austin or a Hulk Hogan that can be a household name that people that don't watch wrestling know, that bring in new fans, that is really, really cool, that becomes an actor, is on Sports Center, right? I mean, that's what it would take, is a mega star, and the likes of which I think we've only seen twice in the history of professional wrestling, which are Hulk Hogan and Steve Austin.
So I'll come back to your point because I have thoughts. Right, we have a spot that we don't barely see. We saw it recently with a buckle break, but Estrada has uncranked the corner turnbuckle from the ring post, and Umaga is now, the top rope is not hanging there anymore. It's on the 3 corners except the one, and Umaga is about to hit Cena with the kind of metal piece that connects the turnbuckle to the ring post. And so missed it. Oh, and here you go. Was this the AA at this point? What were we calling the finishing at this point? But anyway, but then Cena, though, now he's attacking Umaga with it. So, yeah, I think that it's the Dallas Cowboy syndrome of until the top guy goes, like Jerry Jones, you're going to have the same problem with the viewers because he's the one making the decision. And we still, within the last month, we've heard the stories of, and now Cena choking out Umaga with the
doing his STFU, but he's doing it with the ring rope. I mean, it looks like he's going to kill the guy. I mean, this
great face from Umaga right there. Yeah.
Incredible. I mean, it looks like the rope is choking him out. It looks like he is legitimately choking.
Cena just cranking on it. Yep.
With the crimson mask, the fans are standing and kind of going nuts.
Great. So yeah. Anyway, like I said, the Jerry Jones syndrome of just like, until he goes, the Cowboys are going to suck. Like until Vince McMahon goes, like I think that you'd see a pop. I was curious actually.
You know what though, Jeff? That's a perfect analogy because.
Yep.
I mean, it's a perfect analogy. I mean, look at what the Cowboys have done over the past 20 years.
Right. Yeah.
They haven't sniffed the Super Bowl.
Right. And look at, and again, it's like, look at the talent they had with Zeke. Like, you had like Tony Romo got out when he needed to, because dude's got a cush gig at this point. He's a very good commentator. But anyways, I was curious. So I looked, the last time Raw did over 3 million like viewers, it was July 22nd, 2019. That was the Raw reunion episode. And then since then, they have just steadily declined. They did 2.5 million on the Raw season premiere, which was September 30th, which why even do a season premiere? That was 2019. And then steadily it's been since, I'm looking at here, since April 13th. So of course, like the, pandemic didn't help. It has been below.
And there's your match, by the way.
Oh, yep. And that's it. They have done over 2 million twice since April. Like I'd be worried too. So we're talking through the end here. We got good stuff to talk about, but Umaga not able to get up after being choked out,
which was that STFU,
which is awesome. A great finisher. We have not seen that, something like that since. And so I think that was a great way to sell it. And, Umaga, the monster, beating him. Cena just looks, oh boy, beat to hell. Still staring at the crowd with the crimson mask.
It's a hell of a match. All right, let's jump right into the aftermath.
Ho! It's time for the aftermath.
So you were already starting to talk about, but what are your thoughts then?
Great. I think that this one, like, again, we've had now 2 weeks in a row where we've seen things that are a little different. They've played out in a way that kind of made sense. Umaga, the monster, literally needing tactics used against him that we've never seen before. And so how do you beat a guy? You got to remember, he was undefeated. And so how do you beat someone that's undefeated and, coming in that way? And it's just really a monster among men, not to, steal from Braun or anything like that. Use the literal ring ropes to choke the guy out. Like, hey, that's some good storytelling for me. I'll take that. How about you?
Dude, what did I tell you, man? I remember this match being awesome. It was awesome. Super underrated. One of your better John Cena matches ever. I loved it.
So getting into it, what happened? All that good stuff. Of course, having this and, Cena beating him at this point. But right after this, you had Umaga being named as Vince McMahon. You had the Battle of the Billionaires, Donald Trump being the other billionaire. WrestleMania 23. This was at the time, the newer Ford Field. I remember, shout out, me and my buddy Joe went. I just recently found the ticket stubs actually that we printed off. And so I remember we were on the floor. I found the program and the Hall of Fame program and all kinds of good stuff from that. So, but yeah, Umaga being named Vince's representative. And so kind of, once he was at that point, you had this kind of playing out where, again, like this Royal Rumble was late January, but you didn't have WrestleMania that year. Of course, we're still a couple of months out at this point. And so not until April 1st. But you had Umaga taking on Jeff Hardy for the Intercontinental Championship. And so he ended up winning that one from Jeff Hardy. Now you had Trump designating Bobby Lashley as his representative. Now, these two guys, this would be one to kind of for us to dig into a little bit because I don't know all of it. But these guys actually having a feud that lasted beyond this. But this was the Battle of the Billionaires hair versus hair match, which ended up with Lashley winning. And so Vince McMahon getting his head shaved for the sake of the storyline and kind of what was happening. So, You then had, it was a couple weeks after WrestleMania, Lashley in this feud continuing. It was actually a planted, Santino Marella helping Lashley beat Umaga for the Intercontinental Championship. And then that next following pay-per-view after WrestleMania, you had Backlash. You had Umaga, Vince, and Shane McMahon wrestling against Bobby Lashley for what he had at the time was the ECW World Championship. It was a handicap match. But Vince ended up winning that one. I say winning because of everything was happening. So this was a weird time for ECW. No other way to cut it. But then you had Umaga being involved in like that feud as well too. There was a handicap match again, where Lashley winning, and so but he didn't actually win the title because Shane pinned Shane versus Vince, and Vince it was just shenanigans. That's the best way to put it. And so, but these guys having a feud, one night stand, and kind of, that was the kind of end of it at that point. So Cena, though, how this played out for him, you had Cena, it was actually the night after Royal Rumble at this point, you had the Cena Shawn Michaels tag team winning the World Tag Team Championship over Rated RKO, Edge, and Randy Orton. And so Cena, at the night after Rumble, is a double champ. And so, and as we know from Conor McGregor, double champ does what the fuck he wants. And so WrestleMania, you had Cena beating Shawn Michaels to retain that championship, got him to submit to the STF. And then the next night, though, you had Michaels turning on Cena, costing him the championship. And so he ended up throwing him over the top rope. And so just, great feud at that point. The Cena Michaels, there's got to be a match in there that we can kind of go back, find as well too. Cena really feuding with Michaels, who feuded with Orton, he feuded with Edge. There was actually a fatal 4-way at that Backlash, that same one we talked about, where he ended up retaining. But then for better or worse, the great Khali actually declaring to go after Cena's championship. He had laid out all the guys in that one. And so Cena actually feuded with the great Khali. And so he ended up beating him at Judgment Day. And so, and then at One Night Stand and a Falls Count Anywhere match. And so, I would say there was both guys had a not great story. The Battle of the Billionaires, while it put kind of Umaga over a little bit in regards to the overall story, not great. And then you have the great Khali as well too. And that's mixed feelings on the great Khali. I don't think he's a good wrestler, but he's an attraction. So, that's your aftermath for you. I've got some scores and some reviews, but Tom, you got any thoughts on the aftermath? Or we talked a lot about this one. I feel like we got a lot on our mind.
Hit us with the reviews.
So this year, 2007, Cena, numero uno. This is, again, 2 weeks in a row. We got blood and we got the number one competitor of the year. So you got Cena coming in number 1, Umaga coming in number 22. And so the Pro Wrestling Torch write-up on this one, I couldn't find the specific kind of star rating on this one, but John Cena and Umaga each had one of their better matches ever against anyone. It was brutal looking without being ridiculously dangerous or gratuitous. Their facial expressions, the selling, the feeling they were both really fighting and really trying to win made this as a really good main event. Borderline 4 stars. The choke out with the top rope may be a first, and the double table run onto a third table with a splash was a first. And so good call on that one, Tom, again, for both of us. Just really good stuff overall. So the Observer Newsletter, they actually gave this one 4.25 stars. Okay. Umaga vs. Cena was one of the best WWE title matches of the past year or so. They managed to do a street fight that was 90% in the ring and built around largely one gimmick, the steel steps. Umaga lost after Cena choked him out with the ring ropes. He'd hit the guy with everything imaginable, and Umaga kept rising from the dead, and in the end, it took strangulation to put him down. It was a match where Cena got over huge for beating the monster on something that was not a fluke like a month before, and Umaga was still put over so strong that he's still a killer. It was great. What a fucking great match that was. The ref raised Cena's hand afterwards, and Cena had this look on his face like he'd been through a great battle and to reluctantly take a life to win in the end. Wonderful pro wrestling. I went first last week. You can go first this week.
So I got this thing at an 8. The match was excellent. I mean, the only again, why is it an 8 and not higher? Well, there wasn't a massive build to it. There was no, great storyline that got us to this point, nor was there much of an aftermath. So, but as far as just, hey, great match and beat the hell out of each other. Fans loved it. Awesome atmosphere. Big stakes with a title on the line. Beginning of WrestleMania season. I thought it was excellent. So I got this in an 8. What about you?
I'm gonna go same thing. I'm gonna do 8. I thought when I first sat down in this chair, I thought about 8.5. After watching it, I'm gonna give it an 8. It just, because reading the reviews and before we had watched the match, like I always have it in my head, but then after watching it, I think 8's a solid score because I think that there could have been maybe a little bit more. I don't know, maybe a little bit more of like if you're doing the or the last man standing, it could have had maybe a few more chances at something like that, but I'm being nitpicky too, because I agreed with Meltzer on this one. We don't always do that around here, but I think that the one kind of item, the ring steps, as like something that like that is what we're going to keep the focus on, that we're going to make like this is going to be the kind of centerpiece of this match of like, how they're going to beat the hell out of each other. And it worked. Like both sets of both pieces of the ring steps. They just kind of, and we got to see things that we would, again, like it shows they can be innovative. They're just not always being innovative. And so with like the ring rope breaking, like, I know my brother is a huge mark for, a ring destruction spot. And a lot of times like the telltale sign now is if they don't use the electronic boards, you can tell by the end of the night we're probably going to be getting a ring break spot. I know Mike Lee broke a ring rope the other day, the top turnbuckle, but that's always exciting to see. So I think having some of that stuff happen in this match, it made it work. And so but overall, like the product, like it was really good though. And I say, if I had to maybe a little bit more of the last man standing piece of it, because even I had forgot watching that, I was like, oh yeah, until the very end, but it was still really good though. So 8 for me.
Okay, we're on the same page. That's at least 2 weeks in a row.
Good stuff.
We haven't had a massive difference of opinion in a while.
Well, we got some crazy ones coming up here in the next couple of weeks, so I'm sure we'll have to see what happens here, but it should be good.
All right, dude. Well, as always, enjoyed this. Hope everyone listening enjoyed it. We appreciate the support, and we'll catch you next Monday, early in the AM, as always, for an all-new episode of The Payoff.